We will, if you do plan to make a public comment this evening, please get a comment card to Mrs. Coward at this time if you haven't already done so. I would ask that you silence your cell phones and remove hats as we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, if you could do the roll call, please.
Amy.
Present.
Hanson.
Present.
Montague. Murphy.
Present.
Odell.
Present.
Bramber.
Present.
And Luck.
Present. And Mr. Montague did notify us in advance he had a personal conflict this evening. I need a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
So moved. Support.
And it's been decided to adopt the agenda as presented. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, first up this evening, as always, we'll do our reports. And Mr. Soselsky, you can go first.
Thank you and welcome this evening. A couple things to report on some recognitions. Linden L, Hyde Elementary, Central Elementary, Linden Middle School, and Linden High School have all earned the 2025 Michigan Heart Safe School Award. The Heart Safe designation recognizes a school's effort to prevent sudden cardiac death of our students by preparing for a cardiac emergency. There are minimum criteria that had to be met in order to be considered for this designation. A written cardiac response plan, a cardiac emergency response team with CPR and AED certification, a minimum percentage of staff and coaches who are CPR and AED certified. You have to meet the minimum number of cardiac emergency drills, have AEDs accessible in the buildings, and be in compliance with the MHSAA cardiac response policies. A huge thank you to Paige Weber and Daniel Loins, our wonderful LCS school nurses who championed Linden's drive toward these designations. Also like congratulations to Linden L, Hyde L, Linden Middle School, and Linden High School for being named to the 2025 U.S. News and World Report Best Schools within their respective grade levels. This is the first year Linden has had more than Linden High School represented. Ranking criteria, depending on the levels, includes performance and proficiency on state assessments, college readiness, graduation rates, student-teacher ratios, and etc. This is the first time, to my knowledge, that Linden High School has had more than Linden High School represented. I already said that, I apologize. So the last thing I have is our bond projects do continue to be on schedule, and we are looking forward to having our staff and students back in school on August 21st. That's all I have.
Very good, thank you. Any board members with reports this evening? You are all enjoying our summer, which is good. So we'll move along. There are no special presentations or recognitions this evening. We do have one administrative update. I'll turn it over to Mr. Soselsky to do an enrollment update.
Thank you. And again, typically every year we go through this presentation just to talk about student enrollment, specifically to Linden Community Schools. And again, the target is to gain familiarity and understanding of our school enrollment process, what it looks like, to explore how school of choice impacts our student enrollment numbers. And I hope when we're done, we have a better, we can think a little more clear about the impact the school of choice has on student enrollment and the direction of student enrollment, not only in Linden, but across Genesee County. Some assumptions we have to make when we talk about school of choice, whether it's in particular students leaving our district, that live in our district but go elsewhere, they do not have to report that. It's not a separate report that's given to the state or to Linden Community Schools. A traditional release, which usually happens after a school of choice window is closed, or if the student just leaves and they're accepted by the other district if they still live within Linden Community Schools district. Again, there's no report to the state. We do provide an exit survey to those individuals that leave our district, but it's not required. And so again, we'll go over some of those results later on. The information that you see today comes from Unitrix, which is a data warehouse collection of data that we keep with those exit surveys, and then myschooldata.com, which is open to anybody. So again, let's look at our student enrollment. Again, this is spring count. We've used spring count during these presentations, so I stayed with that. These are FTEs, these are not button seats, or excuse me, these are not actual students, because again, some students based on their schedules or situations, these are FTEs, basically what we get the funding for. And so our spring count in 2025 was 2,351 students. A year ago in 2024, we were at 2,360. And you can see that our trend is declining. And again, we've talked about this over the last 8 or 9 years. As far as our student enrollments, we should anticipate a decline. Why is that happening? Well, first, let's look at enrollment summary, and this is by Genesee County. So again, when you look at the trend data, this includes K-12, special ed, alternative ed, part-time FTE students. So again, you go as far back as 1999, we had approximately 84,000 students in Genesee County. In 2024, we have 57,000 students in Genesee County. They're projecting that in 2034, we'll have 49,000 students in Genesee County. Birth rates, we've talked about it many times over the last few years as we've gone through these presentations. Why is Linden seeing a decline in student population? Well, I think you can make a direct correlation not only to Linden, but also to the county. That is birth rates. And again, the information that was provided to us by the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services only went as far back as 2014. But again, you can see there is a decline in the amount of births from 2014 to 2024. In a 10-year span, approximately 1,000 youngsters. So when you compare it to Linden schools, again, there is a correlation. There is a correlation. The red is the Linden enrollment, the blue is the birth rates within Genesee County. This is just 10-year data, 25-year data, I apologize. It's hard to read. Again, it just gives the projected numbers and the past numbers, so I apologize for even having that in there. So let's talk about school of choice for a moment. So when we look at our school of choice numbers, again, these are number of non-resident students enrolled, students that live outside of Linden Community Schools that come here. And then the blue is the number of resident students, so students that live within Linden Community School District that attend elsewhere. Now you ask if they don't report it, how do they get the information? Based on the, when a school district, we have to report every year to the state, our students, they're pulling the address information. So number of resident students, non-resident students enrolled. So again, these are students that live outside of Linden that come to Linden. In 24-25, we have 407 students. Students that live in Linden that go elsewhere, 549. So 549 students that live within our boundaries that are going to other schools. And we'll talk about that in the next slide, what schools those are. So we're seeing a difference of 142. The silver lining, or the good news, we're closing the gap. Slowly, but we're closing the gap. So where are students going? The majority of students are going to Fenton, Lake Fenton, and Hartley, our district neighbors. And the best example I can give you of why, in some cases, was a phone call we received this morning. Yesterday, thank you, of an individual who had students, two students in Linden, and they were going to go to one of the neighboring districts, and we asked them why. Well, because when my wife goes to work, it's closer for her to go to that school than it is to come to this school. So again, why are people leaving? I've said it before, I think a lot of it is logistics when it comes to transportation. We aren't seeing many students ride buses right now. We haven't seen that since COVID. And I know just in conversations, I don't have the facts, but in conversations, we're not the only district that is experiencing that. So as parents are driving their students, or if students are driving, as the example I just gave you, traveling 100 yards versus traveling 10 miles could make a difference in a decision. Students that are coming to Linden, where are they coming from? Well, Byron and Swartz Creek are the top two school districts where we get students that live in those districts that come to Linden. So they're using school of choice, or in some cases, a traditional release to come to Linden. Fenton, Lake Fenton, Heartland are the next three. So again, it gives you some idea of where our students are going and where they're coming from. So again, student withdrawals. Why aren't we aware? As I mentioned earlier with some of the assumptions, you're not required to report it. Those parents are not required to report the students that they leave Linden. Some of them may just go to homeschool, and again, they don't have to report that. Some of them may go on some type of parochial or charter or online school. Don't have to report that. Geographic, just spoke about that. Private schools, online. We only know about those that are communicated, and we do make attempts to communicate, including the survey, including making phone calls if those surveys aren't returned, and including the conversation that happened yesterday. Kudos to Ms. Callett for having that conversation with that parent to find out information so we can track some of that. So we were able to track 133 students in 24-25 that withdrew from Linden for one reason or another. So why were students leaving? Based on the information we were able to gather, 45% of those students, or 61, were leaving, moving, actually uprooting their residence, moving out of our district. 11% were homeschooled, 9% were school of choice, 20% were going to some type of online or virtual school, and then we had 13% that were, I classify as other, which includes charter schools, maybe court appointed, alternative school, private school, etc. Since we've been tracking this information for the last 9 years, 46% of the students that have left our district have simply moved out of the district or moved out of the state. 17% have moved to homeschooling, 9% school of choice, 11% were that other that we talked about, and then 15% in 9 years have left because of online. Now, some of those with the online, the homeschool, or the other, we have not tracked that they've come back. So again, it's a one-time number when they leave, why they left, for that specific reason. If they came back to Linden after that, I could not answer that at this time. Part of the information we try to gather from the families when they leave is their experience here at Linden. And so in 24-25, the information we were able to gather through those surveys, 54, almost 55% had a positive experience in Linden. 15% said they had a neutral experience. 3% or 4 families indicated they had a negative experience. And then 27% just didn't answer that question, good, bad, or otherwise. And again, sometimes it's verbal, sometimes it's paper pencil through the survey or electronic. Over the last 7 years since we've added this question to the survey, almost 58% of the individuals that have left our district have had a positive experience. 17% have had a neutral experience, 5% have had a negative experience with Linden, and then again, 19% of those surveyed just didn't answer the question. So again, that's their experience with Linden. So student enrollment, what are we doing? What can we do? And again, this slide really hasn't changed because there's not much to do except add to it. So when we talk about retention and recruitment, we have added different programs. We've added a K-12 STEM. We've added a business program at the high school. You know, we've added with a bond program, being able to literally update every classroom and provide our staff with professional development opportunities, curriculum opportunities, PLC opportunities that we'll move into next year that will relay back to our students. So we've provided opportunities to try to keep students within our district. And again, why do people leave? Every family's got to make that decision. Communication, yes, we communicate the positives and the pros of what Linden Community Schools can offer. We do that through different print material, online material, open house material, teacher information that they send home, open houses, orientations. We've had radio ads, we've had Tri-County ads, again, to exploit, if you will, in a positive way, Linden Community Schools. Vision versus visionary, we're trying to think ahead. You know, the bond was another example, the business program was another example. To put those programs in place to make sure students had the opportunity. Our STEM program, working at literally, instead of going 12K, we worked at K-12, thanks to Cheryl, some of her visionary thoughts, in creating the early on STEM programs that have now led to what we have here at Linden High School with the thanks of our community supporting the bond. There's reasons people move here. Again, some of them they don't tell you because it's illegal. If they're moving for athletic reasons and we know about it, we deny it. We deny it because they can't participate anyways. You know, and if that's a reason they're coming to Linden, great. We appreciate the pat on the back that we have great athletic programs, but we're students first. And with that, I'll open it up for discussion.
All right. Questions or comments from the board? Mr. Haney and then Mr. Murphy?
Yeah, just going through the numbers, I think in the absence of paying too much attention to the birth rates, do we have any perception, what do we perceive as the greatest threat to our enrollment numbers? Is it homeschool? Part of the thing that's concerning to me is obviously the amount of online and homeschool. That has consistently seemed to tick up. Is there anything else that we perceive as a district that we can do to combat any of those? I think the birth rate, in my opinion, is a little bit of low-hanging fruit, which by all means, there's no reason why we should not pay attention to that and chalk it up to that. I'm just wondering if we get outside of that paradigm, we look outside of that vision and kind of go, okay, well, if we can't control the birth rate, what can we control? Sure. How do we get the homeschoolers and the onlines back?
Yeah, homeschoolers, I don't know if I can answer that question. Because again, why a family, parents choose to homeschool his kid, it's hard to answer that.
Sure.
You know, I did have a conversation with Tabitha, and I explained to her with the online schooling, we have been looking at that again. We had it during COVID, we expanded it once we returned, and our results were not good as far as success rate. Different factors. And then probably within the last year and a half, we've had multiple conversations, especially at the high school now, about the potential of what an online program could look like here, you know, reinstituting that here at Linden. We don't have a concrete plan at this point, but we have had ongoing conversations about potentially looking at what that could bring to Linden schools.
I look at these public school academies, I'm assuming those are charter schools?
I'm sorry, sir.
Public school academies on this chart?
Yes.
Are those charter schools? I mean,
On the right chart.
It's on the one that you said, the enrollment 25-year FTE summary.
Oh, yeah, David, I apologize. So basically, without looking at the exact school you're looking at, so that there are charter academies throughout Genesee County that they made, yeah. And again, I should have taken this out because the information, it's good information, but it's hard to read in a public forum like this.
Yeah.
But no, there are public school charter academies within Genesee County that are part of the GISD because they're allowed to be based on law. Some of them are supported by higher universities or chartered by higher universities. Some are privately funded.
Yeah, it looks like our percentage is about 1.5% to the red. So overall, 2.71 on that chart and 1.88 overall. So it's not like we're outside of the standard norm of what everybody else is dealing with as well too. Okay, I don't have much more. I will say that I'm pretty confident that you guys do a pretty good job of trying to assess this. And it's one of those things we're chalking it up to it is what it is. I get it. But at the same token, if there's any way that we can think outside the box critically and try to get people back, of course, we'll try. And I know you guys are on that same page, so thank you.
Ms. Murphy?
Thank you, Mrs. Luck. Thank you, Mr. Selsky, for all the information, and there is a lot of it there. Going to the student population slide, LCS enrollment. It shows a pretty definite decline for a 17-year period, from 3,100 kids down to 2,350. So that's a concern, obviously. When you go to the next slide, the enrollment summary, that's for Genesee County. the only problem I have, when you have two sides that are kind of meant to be side by side, meant to be somewhat reflective of each other, you've got an extra 10-year time period from 98 to 2025 in that bar graph area versus 2008 to 2025. So the trend can look similar, but it can be also very different when the fact that you took out, 7 years of very high-end enrollment, and then started. So the bottom line is I like to see things that are like mashed up as much as possible if I'm gonna be comparing these things. When we move on to birth rates, there's no doubt that Genesee County birth data is what it is. My only complaint about this is this is the county, this is not Linden. We cannot assume that our birth rate is the same as the county percentage-wise. So if the county birth rates have dropped, 10%, 20%-ish over that time frame, and we can't necessarily assume that we dropped 20%. Because it's not, it's a county. If we had the data that showed, this is Linden's birth rate over that period, then we could make some more assumptions. But given the fact that we're looking at the generic Genesee County, I don't take a whole lot out of this with, other than it could be. Same thing moving on to the next slide, the student population slide. Once again, it basically reflects stuff that might not necessarily be true, because our birth rate for our area could be running at a higher trend than what the county graph shows. Because again, I think a lot of people, I see a lot of houses being built in the Linden area. I know there's not a lot of kids in them, but there's some kids in them. And I don't think we've lost any houses to speak of in this period of 15 years. So again, I think these can be misleading slides with the amount of data that we're getting. It's a guess, quite frankly. The 25-year summary slide, the next one you talk about, I love that slide. I'm glad you put it in there. If that was a mistake, well, that's great. But
Just because of the
yeah, it's a lot of data. It's a lot of data. But it really heightens some things, you look at, like for instance, us at Linden, and we're at 2795 back in good old 1999. Lake Fenton, right close to us, is at 1525. Fast forward to 25 years later, and Lake Fenton has moved up to 2002, and we've dropped to 2384. So tremendous growth, Lake Fenton, and again, not so much growth. In fact, it's tremendous loss for Linden as far as the population goes. And so here you have two districts that are side by side. Wouldn't you think they would reflect the same trend? If we went down, Lake Fenton should go down.
And again, but I don't have the information, historical data to find out what Lake Fenton School District looked like development versus Linden back in 1999.
Well, I think they were pretty low, they had some facilities that were strained pretty badly, certainly behind us. And they did build a new high school, but we built a very nice new middle school, made tremendous upgrades to our high school as well as our elementary. So I can't feel like our facilities are the ones that are not comparing apples to apples to Lake Fenton. So over that time, again, that's a glaring weakness right there that I think needs to be thoroughly investigated. And we just say, well, I can't, with the slides that went on beyond that, to talk about why they leave and all that good stuff. People sometimes will tell you the straight story, and sometimes they just don't want to be a bad guy. They'll just go neutral. They'll go, it was a good experience, even though it might not have been, whatever. They just don't want to be mean about it. So, but the bottom line is the kid left. So that's the most important thing for us. I guess what I get to the point of the whole story is here is, if you take that example of Lake Fenton and us, or that 25-year period, to me, you've got to look at what is causing that. You got to go scorched earth, get right down into and look at every little possibility. You know, I think of things like, well, so say it's like, say they have a better policy on something, maybe bullying. Maybe they're better at bullying than we are, okay? If they take a hard line on it, we maybe don't, okay? Is it something like that? Or is there other things? There's gotta be some reason for it. Bottom line is, we keep telling ourselves we're doing everything right, but yet the trend, you know, the idea that those kids are moving for a job because it's a little more convenient to drop the kid off. That's pretty short-sighted on the parents' part, because there's so many activities that are gonna happen based on them being home and going to school. So yeah, it's more convenient to drop them off at school, but then there's the rest of the school day. There's the school night afterwards. There's the programs to go to. There's so many things that, I don't know, maybe the parent doesn't realize that when they set themselves up, but the bottom line is, like the example you talked about with those two youngsters, they're not coming back. Once they establish themselves in another district, they get friends in another district, you'd play hell to get them back, okay? So that's the other thing that we talked about, you know, with this early childhood thing. I'm encouraged by some of the information you shared with us. It seems like it's a more aggressive path than it has been over the last year. But again, we gotta close the deal on a lot of these things. We've got people out there that are interested, but I really believe that it just takes a lot of personal communication, investment of time in person, time talking to these families, talking to these parents. And like I said, with Mrs. Rush giving us that explanation on the last time about that whole, how the funding works on the early childhood, it was like, it's not as clear and simple as you think it is. Well, we get so much money for a kid. Yeah, but you can't spend it in this way, you can't spend it in that way. So the bottom line is that, can you really benefit financially from it? I'm not sure you're gonna benefit as much financially short term, but long term, by having that kid in your district for 15 or 12 more years, 13 more years, that's a great investment. I mean, that's gonna be $150,000 if we're not careful over the life of that student. So to the district. So, you know, the bottom line is, I think we can't rest on our laurels. We've got to do something different. And like I said, it was encouraging to see the things that were listed on that early childhood things about how you're trying to get to these kids and all that good stuff. But, you know, that has to happen. But then on the other side of the kids that we have right now, we cannot afford to lose kids for a bad reason. And a bad reason, in my opinion, would be like a policy, like say bullying, that's soft. It's not hard enough. And I'm kind of like one of these people that believe if you cut off if you draw the line on what's wrong early on in the process, it doesn't get worse over time. If you allow something to be done wrong, you know, well, okay, don't do it again, but there's no punishment, then that student might tend to do a little bit more wrong the next time, and the next time, and it just keeps, at some point you gotta draw the line. And it's not just that student being a problem, they affect other students around them. And so those people that are being negatively affected with the school of choice option, and you know, like I said, it's not, with the amount of people that are not riding the bus, the parents are delivering those kids to school. So is it here, or 5 miles to the west, or to the north, or east or toward the north? They've got options. And, you know, it's, if it was like, well, people can't afford to deliver their kids through their car, well, we know that's not the case, because the buses are empty, they're flat out empty, and the student drop-off lines are endless. So, you know, bottom line is, I think we need to take a more across-the-board, stricter status about this, and show parents that we really do care about every kid. And we're not gonna let anybody fall through the cracks. As long as you're doing things the right way, you'll be fine here at Linden. But you start messing around and doing things the wrong way, we gotta slap their hands right now. And not allow it to go on and, well, okay, don't do it again. So, I just think that might be something like that that's causing some of this erosion of our student body. If there's issues about programs that we're not offering, then we gotta get to that level too, we gotta find that out. I know you've added a lot, at high school, I was amazed at all the curriculum they've added, seemingly with stagnant or declining enrollment, yet we're offering more classes than we could have ever offered in the past with much larger enrollment. So, I can't believe that's really the problem. But there's a problem, so, bottom line is, I think we cannot rest on our laurels of what we're doing right now. We have to be more aggressive at changing and really finding out what's causing the problem. Thank you.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you for the presentation, and I know you and I talked earlier, and I thought we had a good conversation about this. I do agree that I think the birth rate, is not really the excuse that we're looking at. Overall, I don't think it's just Genesee County, I think a lot more of the population is moving out of Michigan and to other states that are better economically advancing than what we are, so we can't control who's coming into the state, who's fleeing those rates, and then the birth rate either of Genesee County. But like they said, we had to fix something, and I was looking at the data, the student population chart. So here's one I don't think that, actually I forgot to speak to you about this. If you look at the enrollment from 2019, 2020, 2021, and 22, there's an obvious pattern where there was a big loss of students between 2020, 21, and 22. That's when COVID happened. And there was a lot of parents that just weren't happy with a lot of the districts for many reasons. So I don't think that's as much of our fault, because we couldn't control what COVID did, the lockdowns, so some parents did go into homeschooling their kids. And then some of the other issues I do think is bullying, which we as a school can only handle so much. That is a parenting thing on some of the issues, and then if a child's sensitive or it's just a very hard thing, I think, especially with the female students, emotions, things like that. So I think we try to handle it as best as we can, but I don't think any school, for that matter, not just ours, is doing top notch, because it's a thing that's gotten worse since COVID. So I think that if we could do online school, that would be great. I know personally when my kids were students, of at least I think 6 of them that went online, we're not allowed to have online, and I think that we're losing quite a bit of students by not having that online program. Even if they just need a year off and they can come back into school if it is a bullying thing, and just provide them every opportunity. But I think we do a pretty good job. I did get a lot of feedback when I was running to be on the school board from past students, parents, asked them what their concerns were and what they liked. And I will tell you that a bulk of it was bullying, but that happens at every school, so we can see with the data, the kids are leaving out of Fenton. They're switching schools, and maybe as a trisequordium, we could even try to see what are the best practices, what schools handling it better, just because I don't think it falls on the administration 100%. It could be a family value issue with the bullying. So I appreciate everything you're doing. I think you're doing well. I'm looking at all the factors that are kind of going into all of this over the last couple of years, so thank you.
Yeah, I just have a few comments. First off, I don't think we have an erosion problem. I honestly see it opposite, and looking at the school of choice numbers into Linden, if you look at that chart, I think on page 10, we continually have more each year. So there's less students available, and yet we're getting more of them in Linden. So that tells me a big part of the story. So that even though there's less students in the area, more of them are choosing to come here. Yeah, that's the slide. And when you talk about like closing that gap, I mean, yeah, that would be great if we had as many coming in as we did going out, but you can't really control that. The birth rate is a huge part of the problem, and we could sit here till next Christmas and determine how we feel about the data for Genesee County versus Michigan or whatever. The bottom line is nationally, we're at the lowest birth rate in history. That's just a fact. I guess unless people aren't reporting births or having kids at home and not reporting or whatever, but, so that is affecting, I mean, if you have watched the news, I mean, there's universities and colleges closing their doors, like, the higher ed is feeling the same push of like, fewer students, so there's nothing we can do about that, and I would say in general, we probably follow a very similar trend line. Yes, maybe we have a little bit more, a little bit less in Linden, or, you know, in Livingston County, because our school district does span that county as well, you know, but I don't think that's really gonna be significant when it comes to, I mean, I mean, the new builds in the area, that should help, that will be nice. I think a big thing, if you look at, I know Mr. Murphy was talking about the 25-year spread or trend or whatever. I mean, if you think about it, the modality of how we deliver education has completely changed in the last like 5 years. Like 25 years ago, there wasn't online options. Yes, you could homeschool, but you like went to a building physically, or you homeschool. You didn't have options of school of choice necessarily. You didn't have options of doing things online. So there's so many more options now. So coupled with lower birth rates all around, and then now a plethora of additional options for students to do. I think, I mean, when you consider all that, I feel like the fact that our numbers are still like trending this way, I bet you if we looked at other school districts in our county, maybe not Fenton Lake, they're probably pretty similar, but other school districts in our county would be plummeting in the opposite direction. So I think we have a lot to be proud of there. When you talk about the few, you know, of course you never want to be complacent, right? It's already been mentioned. You don't want to be like, well, we're good enough, that's fine. But also, when you look at the numbers of people that have reported some sort of negative response to leaving here, it is a very, very small percentage. In fact, so small that a statistician would be like, it's kind of insignificant. Now, I wouldn't say it's insignificant because it's a student or multiple students, but it's so small that, you know, you can't fix everything for everyone. If something happens, an experience happens with someone, you know, you can't change their mind about it. You know, I was just personally working with a local contractor, and I had a bad experience like 15 years ago with them, and I was ready to just like count them out for good. Well, that's really not fair. A lot of people that worked there 15 years ago don't still work there now, you know, so, but once you get a negative impression, it's hard to take that away. So I mean, when you look at that experience chart, I know it doesn't count for everything, but I feel like it's not like we're plummeting or eroding, or it's I think fairly positive. People are still saying I had a positive experience, even though I'm leaving for whatever reason. So I think that's something we should be really proud of. Regarding the, you know, the fiscal responsibility of doing online programs are not cheap to run. It's always, even though you think it might be like, well, online. So it's really hard, like unless you have like a really big cohort of students that want to do it, it's hard to do it right. And then you get the bad experience, and then it's like, so with so many other online programs available, I think it's gonna be harder and harder for individual school districts to, per each run, you know, an online program in the right way. But obviously it's always something to keep an eye on. Maybe they'll become things that are easier to integrate or whatever. But all in all, I would say from a perspective, like from my perspective, but I think also hopefully from the rest of the board, I would say this is all pretty positive. We can't control a lot of it, you know, given the circumstances. So I just thanks for presenting the information. I mean, I know we kind of have the same conversation every year around this, and until like all of a sudden we have 700 new kindergartners, and we probably will. But it's good because it's good to be constructive and to be thinking about it, because that's what keeps us, you know, continuing to move in the right direction. So thanks, Russ.
Thank you, guys.
All right, Mrs. Cal, do we have any public comments this evening? Okay, so no public comments. We'll move along to the consent agenda, which includes minutes from our budget hearing, along with minutes from our regular meeting on June 25th, minutes from our closed session meeting on June 25th, invoices for the month of June 2025, and the personnel summary sheet. It is the administrative recommendation to approve the consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
Support.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, we have several action items this evening. So first up is to set our board meeting calendar dates for 2025, 2026. I know many of these action items, everybody's had information to kind of review in their board packet and in advance, but over the years, we have kind of consistently met on the first and third Wednesday of the month, at least as long as I've been on the board. The start time changed from 7 to 6 a few years back, and it is the recommendation of the administration to kind of continue that established meeting timeline. So do I have a motion to approve the board meeting calendar dates as presented?
So moved.
And moved, and I'll second that. So now it's moved and seconded if we want to have some conversation about it. And any comments or questions? Mr. Murphy?
Hey, Mr. Luck, yeah, thank you for referencing the fact that the time change of the meeting went from 7 to 6, about 3 years ago, maybe 4. That kind of came out of nowhere. There's really no board discussion spurring that on. It was just basically dumped on, just like this meeting here, just magically changed from 7 to 6 without even notifying the board other than, hey, check your packet. There's been significant change. So I was kind of taken back by that. I'm okay with 6. It's not as ideal for me personally, but I'm good for whoever the mass is. But I want to include the public and the mass on that, not just the people that sit here at this table. Because quite frankly, our responsibility is more to people in the community to make sure that we're providing them with an opportunity. So, you know, again, I don't have any feedback that says, hey, we should go back to 7. I hear a lot of negative comments about the 6 o'clock meeting. I don't hear that. So I don't know that it's out there. We have never really surveyed that. Something that I would like to see us talk to people about before next year. I'm good with saying it's 6 for the upcoming year, but I do think it's something that, you know, obviously this is a summer meeting, we're not gonna get any attendance at this meeting, but, you know, just talk to maybe some of these parents that have their, you know, child recognitions, so working well for them to come in at 6 versus a 7 o'clock meeting. So I just think there's an opportunity there to get a good feedback for, what the mass of people want us to do, so. Other than that, the dates are fine, first and thirds work good, on Wednesdays, I think, you know, there has been some church discussions over the years, but I think, it's not every Wednesday, so, you know, at least a couple times a week, if your church has a Wednesday service, then you can at least make those. So, yeah, I'm good with, other than question the time, but, I'm good with everything else, thank you.
Yeah, and there are a couple of Wednesdays where it's not the first or third, just based on scheduling, so there are a couple of odds and ends. I'd like to point out there are more public members here tonight than there have been some of the other meetings, so thank you for being here. And,
We're gonna sit around and make it look like there's more than
There you go.
Funny
There you
row.
go. Yes. Yeah, and I don't know, I mean, I guess this can be just kind of a thing we can agree to disagree on, Steve. I feel like we discuss the start time every year, so I don't know that it's like catching anyone off guard, like we talk about it. I don't feel like it ever just changed without us having an opportunity to discuss it at this meeting. And that's fine. I also, in my opinion, like the board meeting is to conduct board business, and it is an open meeting to the public, but it should accommodate a time that's good for the board. Not that I don't want to accommodate the public, because I feel like 6 o'clock is better for the public for student recognitions and things like that, 'cause it's a little earlier in the evening, for people, but anyway, obviously, if there's good reason to make a change, again, like you said, you haven't seen good reason to, but it's something you just wanted to like think about.
I didn't see a reason the first time it changed from 7 to 6, so, you know, it was just done. It was just, came out of the blue, recommended, no board discussion leading to it saying like, hey, we should consider 6 o'clock instead of 7. There was never any of that discussion by the board at the time that happened. It just came out of the blue at this meeting, boom, it was 7 o'clock, everybody thought it was 7 o'clock, like, and beginning of time, and all of a sudden it went to 6 o'clock. So, that's the point I'm talking about, where there was no real notice and discussion about it.
Well, and like I said, we can agree to disagree. I feel like
That's
that's
a
lost.
fact, Mrs. Lewis. It's
Okay.
not a disagreement.
Well,
As it was
possibly,
presented at this meeting, then there was a chance to discuss it, if the board member didn't agree, they had a chance to vote on it, and obviously they agreed. This is
You weren't on the board
position.
when it happened.
It doesn't matter if it's an action item, the board has to vote on it and discuss it.
That's right.
yeah, so, also at that time, I'm guessing maybe meetings were going 3, 4, 5 hours long, and maybe it was just a time that we thought, well, if we start a little earlier, then we're not all up till 11 o'clock at night at the meeting, during that time. I don't honestly remember the reason why
Yeah,
we
you don't.
discussed it. I do,
You don't remember.
yeah, I don't.
I don't know, it was you and Mr. Maker and Mr. Soselski and maybe Mrs. Cabot, you were the 4 that came up with that change.
Well, it would have been the 7 board members that
No,
voted.
but you're the one that brought it to the table.
Okay.
You didn't
I
say.
don't, we don't need to argue about this, Steve.
Right. So-
Anyhow, does anyone else have comments about, the board calendar dates? All right, seeing none, it's been moved and supported to approve the board meeting calendar dates as presented. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, second item is the resolution to redesignate authorized signatories for the district accounts for 2025-26. The business office director and superintendent traditionally have been named in the past, and we would continue this practice, it is a recommendation of the administration to, designate Kylie Rush and Mr. Soselski for the 2025 school year. Do I have a motion?
So move.
And I will support that, so there's a motion and support to approve the resolution to redesignate authorized signatories for the district accounts 25-26 is presented. Comments or questions on this? Seeing none, I know this is pretty just standard business procedure. I just appreciate, you guys handling this on behalf of the district. Mr. Anthony, you have? Oh, okay, you were just. Aye. All right, very good. Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, designation of electronic transfer officer. Similarly, board policy 0154 and 6144 require the board to adopt a resolution authorizing electronic transfers and electronic transfer officer, authorized agents to act on behalf of the board and the district, following protocols for past years. It is the administrative recommendation to appoint Mrs. Rush and the business director as the designee for electronic transfer officer. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
It's been moved, and I will support that to approve the designation of Mrs. Rush for the electronic transfer officer as presented. Any questions or comments, Mr. Murphy?
So is it just Mrs. Rush on this one? There's no second signature or second person involved?
Yeah, I think we might have talked about this last year. Yeah, there's not.
Is there a reason why we don't?
Just following the protocols of usually the banks for the institution in order to have, we've got the other, two people, whether it be myself or depending on the situation, payroll is transferring the money. Sometimes it's just from account A to account B, so I do believe that we did talk about, I'd have to look back at those notes again, but no, to my knowledge, if I remember correctly, they were just requesting one.
So you're saying banks are driving this request and not us, or not our?
I'm not.
It says board policy, I'm curious, I guess we're reading those policies a little more.
Yeah, I guess I don't have that answer up at this time, Steve.
Well, the policy is regarding having an electronic transfer officer. So whether we have one officer or multiples, that probably doesn't affect our policy. It would be more so the bank's policies are affected by having more than one person.
It's just that, it puts a person in a bit of a bad situation if they have, not that Mrs. Rush is gonna have a problem, but when one person's the only one involved with those kind of decisions, and, you kind of feel bad, there's a lot of pressure on them, so.
Well, yeah, I do remember that.
If it was this way last year, I guess at this point, I'm okay with moving forward. We can go a little further for next year as well.
Yeah, it was Mrs. Dickey in the past, because I feel like we even talked about it a while back, and it had something to do with, just multiple people having access to the electronic transfer. And I don't think it would be impossible if, like, Mrs. Rush was gonna be like on leave, for us to like get a second designee added in. That would be just something we would do if that became necessary.
I'll pull this information.
Any other comments on this one? All right, seeing none, then we'll go ahead and vote, to approve the designation of electronic transfer officer as presented. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, next up is to approve our legal counsel. So the district has used the services of two law firms for many years. We have a good relationship with both. It is the administrative recommendation to approve the legal counsel as presented, which would be continued to use Troon and Collins of Blaha, with their flat retainer fee and then charge per occurrence. Do I have a motion to approve the legal counsel as presented?
Support.
It's been moved and seconded, so any comments on this, questions? Mr. Murphy?
Yes, Mrs. Buck, thank you. Mr. Selsky, the true retainer, 2,500, doesn't go towards any future work that they would do. That we hired them to, I think they do a lot of, let's say, bond work, lane work. They don't seem to do much of the labor stuff. They do the other kinds of things for the district. That 2,500 doesn't get applied to that bill, if we have any, or does it?
When we used Troon this last time around and we have for all three phases of the bond, when we go to bond that money out, no, there wasn't charge for that particular service that they do, but the retainer fee allows us to have access
We have used True for quick questions, financial questions, like for example, on the electronic transfer, I would be able to call them, they would not charge us for that type of question.
Okay.
I have used them, we have used them, for example, we got their opinion on the conflict of interest discussion we had. They charged us for that. So the financial stuff based on the retainers, what we get their services for, and alerts and updates and information, and we do, I couldn't tell you exactly, like if it's bond related, they're not charged. It's just a simple question to charge it,
I just wonder if there's a value to the retainer versus, we just pay hourly to Collins and Blaha.
Yeah.
And they seem to pick up the phone when we call them.
Yeah, oh yeah.
So I don't know that, if Drew doesn't wanna pick up the phone, we'll call somebody else.
Yeah, and True's been good about communicating with us. My understanding, that's just how they do business. True includes the retainer for schools, and these services, where Collins and Blaha, to my knowledge, they strictly, and again, might be situation dependent.
What's True's hourly rate? Does it vary depending on what they want?
Yes.
Okay, so it could be more than $3.12 an hour, it could be.
Potentially, yeah, I can,
Probably something we should, again, look at for
Yeah.
the future. We've been, we've used them both for a long time, and that's good, and that can be bad. As long as we don't have any negative experiences that we know of, then it's good. But, again, I think we just gotta drill down on this retainer value, and whether there's any value there or not. So, other than that, I guess I can see us moving forward. It's awfully expensive to do legal, so hopefully we do as legal as possible, and I think you've tried to make that happen, so, thank you.
All right, yeah, it's kind of like when you have to have car insurance, right? Insurance is expensive, having attorneys available is expensive, but you kind of have to protect the district and individuals as well, so. But I think that's a good question, so. All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve the legal counsel as presented. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Up next is to look at our work session and regular meeting agenda templates for 2025. It is the administrative recommendation to just continue on with the same templates we've been using for the last several years regarding our agenda templates. Hopefully everybody's had a chance to take a peek at those. So it is, do I have a motion to approve the work session and regular meeting agenda templates as presented? I'll say so moved.
Support.
It's been moved and supported, so now we can have some conversation. Any questions or concerns on the agendas? Mr. Murphy?
Thank you. The meeting agenda format overall is fine, it's just the devil's in the details, in my opinion. I'll start with the superintendent comments. Years ago, not too long ago, we used to be allowed to ask a clarifying question of the superintendent from his report. This report is something we don't get in advance. I know everybody says, well, why would you call them in advance and ask them that question? Because we don't get that. So, to me, it's a necessary thing for us to be able to respond, in fact, in time, let the public know that we're concerned about what was said there, or some clarification. Because there's really no help from Mr. Selsky on whether or not he said enough. It's just like, this is what I came up with, and this is what I said. So, miss a few details? I don't know. There's nobody checking balance on that. So, I would like to go back to the old days when we used to be allowed to ask a question of clarification about something that Mr. Selsky said. And I'd like to take it a step further, and Mr. Selsky started to do this and then it kind of like paused, is have him include his superintendent report in our packet as much as possible. I know there's some stuff that comes up at the last minute, but with our electronic updates, we get stuff flashed at us like literally minutes before the meeting. We can do everything right now with, it's not the old paper days. So I think that would be a real positive upgrade to the functioning of the board and to the community's perception of that. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is we talked about public comments. And years ago, again, when I was president, we instituted a philosophy of, instead of having people sit there and speculate Because the public comment would come first for the meeting. All the agenda items listed on the meeting were below the public comment. So people in the audience would be asked to make comments on everything, including things that we were gonna be discussing and deciding on. So they would have to speculate on, well, I should probably say this, I wonder if they're gonna think of that. It can go on endlessly about what can go through a person's mind about what's gonna be on that agenda item. So I thought, we decided back then, that it made more sense for us to have a presentation from the presenter. The board discussed it, and at the end of the board's discussion, we threw it back and said, is there any public comment on this item at that time? So they heard everything that's been said by board members, by presenters, and then they go, no, I'm good, everything's good, no? Or they might have a clarifying question. And I love it when I get that information at the 9th hour or the 11th hour and go, I never thought of that. I'm glad you brought it up because it wasn't brought up by the presenter. I didn't think of it, and that's material to this discussion. So I would like to see us go back to the form of including public comments for agenda items as they occur. Non-agenda items would again be handled at the beginning of the meeting in item G, under item G, public comments. So I'd just like to get some feedback from the board, see if they feel anything about that concept. I know that none of the board members right now were on that board when we implemented it. And it's just been over time where it got taken off. Again, this is another one of these things that just got taken off. When we had new leadership at the present level, they just kind of like, yeah, we had a chance to discuss it, we had a chance to vote it down or vote it up or whatever, but the bottom line was, there was no discussion in a public meeting saying like, I think this is not working well for us here. We should consider not doing this. It was just, again, implemented by the leadership of the board at the time, and that's not the way it was established. It was established with an ongoing discussion about what do you think about this? Kind of like what I'm bringing up right now. So I guess I'll wait for some discussion on any thoughts on that concept. Thank you.
All right, I have just a couple of comments on this. I guess first off, and it's really not worth like just getting into the opinions on the matter, but I do feel the need to kind of publicly, I feel like Mr. Soselski's superintendent report was sort of just run through the muck a little, and most of what he reports on is all positive business that's going on, giving us updates and such. And yes, we may not be asking questions at that time, but I've never encountered where I called in the next day or some other time and asked the question and haven't got it answered or had a chance to discuss it. So I don't really think that's a big issue, and honestly, it really doesn't even affect the agenda because that's just kind of our interim way we've been doing things. Board updates that are sent out to the board on a weekly basis outside of the packets and agendas include much of the information that's provided in the superintendent report as well. And then, regarding responding to public comment, like it probably came about, and as you pointed out, no members here besides you were on the board during that particular time. I would imagine it had something to do with updates on Open Meetings Act, because it's against the Open Meetings Act to respond to public comment, so having like full-on discussions with whoever's here regarding items that we're voting on just doesn't seem, Mr. Murphy, I let you say your piece without interrupting you. I'd appreciate it if you let me say mine. Thank you. Anyway, so I imagine it had something to do with that, and I also imagine that there was opportunity for discussion when it was taken off the agenda at that time, which we weren't here for, but we're still discussing it. At any rate, does anyone else have comments regarding this particular item? Ms. Brander?
I guess I kind of forgot about this part, but being that I attended these board meetings and sat in those rows for so many years, I can tell you that when you do want to attend a board meeting and you want to make a public comment, putting it down at the bottom after you, as a board, have had discussion items would be a lot more helpful than having to try to remember it for the next board meeting. So I kind of see what he's saying. I don't think that we would necessarily have to have both up in there, but could we maybe move or talk about moving the public comments down a little bit later so that if a committee member wanted to listen, and they wanted to make a comment about that topic before we voted on it, could we move it down?
We can do whatever we want. But another thing to think about is, so yes, there are times where maybe a public person would want to make a comment after all these items have gone on and not wait. Also, sometimes, a lot of times, people are here to say something that they've already got in mind, and then they don't have to wait till the end of the board meeting to say it. They can say it before we get into all of this, different discussion items. So there's kind of two different ways to think about it, I guess. Mr. Haney, you have?
Yeah, I don't think there's a perfect methodology here. As long as we adhere to the agenda of anything that's on action is discussed, the previous meeting, correct? So essentially, if somebody wants to hear, correct? For the most part.
Yeah.
Consent items, yeah.
Yes.
So from that aspect, I understand the basis of what the question is. I do. Like you said, for the reasons you stated, people do have an opportunity for public comments. I think to his point, he's saying that we're preparing to vote on stuff that people don't have an opportunity to talk on. That's why I think succession-wise, it's important that we do identify maybe some of those key issues in the previous meeting leading up to that actual action item. So that's my 2 cents worth. Thank you.
Yeah, I just quick go back again.
The biggest focus here is allowing as much pertinent information to be delivered to the board in a timely fashion. So again, it's not a discussion back and forth at that point. It's a, does anybody have any public comments regarding this issue that we're gonna vote on? Okay, so putting it down at the bottom is not gonna do us much good, because we're gonna vote on it, and then we're gonna hear later in the meeting about how somebody felt about something, and we're gonna go like, gosh, I wish I would've known that earlier, I might have changed my vote. So the bottom line is that if you tie it with the item at that time, and you know what? We found we had very few times that people did that, very few times. But you know what? I always felt great about the fact that we allowed everybody to interject information in a very timely fashion. So, again, I think it was a better model than what we're doing now. And again, nobody could raise a concern the way it was done during that time period, because they had their chance to be here, to say what they wanted to say, to give the information as much as possible for the board to make their decision. So I guess that's what, so I guess I want to make a motion that we adjust the public comments part of this meeting agenda to include public comments for non-agenda items under G, and then a separate statement, public comments for agenda items will occur as the item is discussed. So if it's on the agenda as an item, it will be discussed. Any public comments on those items will be received at that point. And that's it. So you're basically peeling out some of the potential public comments under G and putting them, tying them to the thing. I just think it's much more appropriate for everybody involved.
So there's already a.
So that's my motion to adjust the agenda. I guess I'm
You're
looking
gonna
for.
have to kind of get a little more succinct, because I don't think I caught it.
Okay.
You made a motion to adjust the agenda for non-agenda items
No.
under G?
For public comments, G will be, instead of public comments, it will be public comments for non-agenda items. Then we would have to include under that, as part of that statement, public comments for agenda items will be received as the items are discussed on the agenda.
So essentially,
That's what we got done.
comment after every.
Whether
every
it's,
action item?
so yeah, each item as we go down. Okay, any public comments? Nope, okay, moving on. Take the vote. I mean, it'll take 3 seconds to get it done, 9 times out of 10. And, that one time will be, probably glad we heard what they had to say. Instead of them speculating up here at G, before we've talked about any of these items, speculating at that point, boy, I sure hope they, I don't know if they're gonna talk or vote like I think they should on that issue, and I don't know if they know everything that's, because they haven't heard them discuss it. Even though it's been discussed at a previous meeting somewhat, there's always new information that's
Mr.
brought.
Murphy, I think we understand the motion, we gotta
Okay.
keep it the formality of it.
Yeah.
So there's a motion to,
Adjust.
amend the current motion for
Right.
the meeting templates. Is
Right.
there support? Okay, seeing none, then we'll go back to our our original motion, which was to approve the work session and regular meeting agenda templates as presented. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
I guess I'm confused with May, because we didn't address what I had asked about, if we could move it to the bottom. So what I had made an approved motion.
You can still make a motion if you want. You can make a motion anytime you want.
It's too late, no, I do, right?
Approved.
Yeah, so
A
I'll.
board member can make a motion really at any point during the meeting if they want to, so if you'd like to make a new motion, you can do that.
To go back on the decisions already made.
As a board member, we can make a motion at any point during any meeting,
We can
anytime
change
we
this
want.
whenever you want down the road, right? 6 months from now?
We can do whatever, we can do it for the next meeting,
Next
anytime.
one.
My brain just kinda went somewhere where.
No, it's okay. As a board member though, we do have that ability to make a motion on any item at any time during any board meeting, anytime we want, whether it's here or not. So if you, okay, I don't want you to feel like you didn't have a chance.
I'll listen.
Okay, all right.
Good. I didn't hear very many votes cast on that. I heard my nay.
I said nay, but.
I didn't hear too many yays.
Well, I raised my hand and said yes. There's, and Mrs. Keller, did you have trouble seeing the votes or hearing the votes?
Did you get them all?
I did.
It was silent votes. I didn't hear a lot of yays. Okay, somebody raise their hand.
Okay.
It is yays.
I should have called.
So-
I should have called for roll call. Sorry.
Yes.
For-
For sure. Okay, sorry, just gonna take a minute to let my brain do that. All right, up next is our ORS lawsuit, presentation. We've had, Mr. Siselsky gave us an update on this, probably about a year ago, and, has another update here for us, so, let's just go ahead, and, I'll make the motion to approve the ORS lawsuit versus Batista settlement resolution as presented. Do I have support?
Support.
Okay, so with that, Mr. Siselsky, if you'd like to, share with us the information you got together, and we can ask questions along the way, that, it just makes it easier. if we have
Yeah, I'm
questions.
sorry, I
You're
jumped up
good.
a little early.
You're good.
So again, I just wanted to update the board, on the ORS lawsuit. We did speak, about this and where it was, I believe it may have, April, it was in April, when I brought it to the board's attention. And what it meant, and now we have the update here on 7/16, because there has been a settlement in the Batista versus ORS, which affected, retirement for individuals through the educational system with ORS, the Office of Retirement Services. So in May of 2025, they basically settled and they outlined 3 different remedies for the treatment of individuals that may have retired in the past and potentially retiring in the future. Please keep in mind, ORS will still determine the retirement pension amount for those that retire. They literally go through a process and they look up your overall compensation, percentage increases, so on and so forth, and then they actually tell you how much you'll get as a pension once that individual retires. So they separate into 3 groups. Group A, any individual that retired between January 1 of 2015 and July 1 of 2021. These individuals may request an ORS review of their final average compensation. So again, I would assume these particular individuals, either 3 best years or their 3 top years, depending on the retirement system, if they retired in 2015 through 2021. So again, with the settlement, we move away from the normal salary increase, which was the NSI factor, which depending on the job that you had, primarily central office superintendent, assistant superintendent, there was a percentage max on what you could increase year to year that impacted your final average compensation. That would count towards your pension. So with Group A, they basically put an 8% average annual compensation increase limit. So they removed the normal salary increase and they put basically an 8% ceiling. And again, based on situations, ORS will make that determination. So that was Group A as far as a remedy. Then we have Group Bs. These are individuals who retired between July 1 of 2021 through June 30th of 2025, so just a few weeks ago. Again, they got rid of the NSI, and they're subject to an 8% average annual compensation increase limit, compounded across a period as set forth in the order. So again, based on retirement based on what's included in your final average compensation. Those who exceed the limit, 8%, can request an ORS review to determine if the additional compensation should be included. ORS still can credit the compensation above the 8% threshold if a Board of Control, which is the Board of Education, adopts a certified resolution affirming that individual compensations increases were not intended to artificially inflate retirement benefits. And that's what I will ask the board to do later this evening. Group C are for individuals that are actively working. It remains very clear that well-documented compensation practices will be key in supporting future retirement compensation credit decisions. Therefore, it is crucial that salary schedules are adopted for district leaders and others not employed under a CBA. So as we've gone through a lot of our negotiations this year, I think we had 14 contracts that we were able to settle this year. Salary schedules were incorporated into those contracts. Very similar to what you guys have seen in my contract, or Cheryl's, or even Kylie's contract with that salary schedule. So in Linden, we do have salary schedules, as I mentioned. We do have CBA groups that have salary schedules in place already. And many of you may have seen those through the steps, the salary steps, throughout the length of the contract. That would be considered a salary schedule. So again, tonight I am asking the board to pass the included resolution. I'll pop a little bit of that up here in a minute. And again, it does provide protection to any adversely, not just superintendent or assistant superintendent, but any adversely affected LCS member that may want to appeal to ORS for a recalculation. It does show that the board expectation is that compensation paid to LCS employees should count toward the employee's pension. And it does create a safe harbor and establishes intentional Board of Ed action in the now and in the future. So if ORS does attempt to limit pension final average compensation of employees. So the crux of the resolution, therefore be resolved that the board certifies that it has never provided an increase to any employee compensation for the purpose of spiking or inflating the amount that employees' final average compensation as calculated by the ORS. The second piece is this resolution is acknowledged by the board to comply with the settlement terms of Batista versus the Office of Retirement Services and should be interpreted as such in any future proceedings or controversy between the district employees and the Michigan Office of Retirement Services. And just as a note, this resolution came from Collins and Law.
All right, thank you, Russ. Any comments or questions on this? Mr. Murphy?
Thank you, Mrs. Black. Mr. Sosowski, could you give us an example of somebody who might have tried to spike in the past? Just as a general, is it, like for instance, an annuity, is that annuity included as part of the compensation package?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so if somebody, board decided to drop in a bunch of annuities for certain people.
Just out of nowhere?
Yeah, well, I mean, hey, the last 3 years, hey, this is like, you've been good for us, and I'm not saying you've been good for us, and hey, you know, we'd like to send you out with a little golden parachute, so, we just like you, man, we're gonna give you these annuities, these compensation bump.
Well, I think maybe a better example, Steve, is if the board granted a 3-year contract to a superintendent. And so the year before, the superintendent was making $100,000. And then over the next 3 years, they're gonna make $200,000.
Right.
So I think that may be a better, all-inclusive, final average compensation.
How gross would you think it'd have to go to trigger the spiking philosophy? Would it have to be like a 15% bump or 20%?
Well, 8%.
So anything over 8 would be considered spiking?
Well, no, spiking would be considered if the board intentionally increased it over the, at the time, normal salary index, which wavered year to year, and for our district with our size, it was anywhere from 5 to 3% on any given year. So that would be an example, spiking would be an example of the board intentionally gave, in my example, we're gonna give you this money because we know you're gonna retire in 3 years.
Right.
So that would be an example of spiking, if they intentionally gave them that increase for the purpose of inflating their pension.
In the absence of job duties.
Yes.
Thank you.
No, but like I say you've got an employee that's been with you for a long time, And the board doesn't necessarily know that they're gonna retire in 3 years, but maybe the superintendent does know, and says, hey, you know what? Let's adjust your pay schedule more in line with what's out there in the industry right now for your job. We haven't done it to this point, we're just gonna do it for the next 3 years, and, oh, by the way, you're gonna get a little benefit when you go to retire. That kind of stuff, to me, would be very troubling if it happened.
If the board intentionally
We
made
wouldn't have
that,
any knowledge of this per se.
then the board would not have intentionally spiked for that reason.
So it could happen even without the board's.
And again, the ORS can make that decision.
So this is simply the board level,
Yes, sir.
so this isn't covering any of the administrators, you, anybody else,
This resolution,
it's for us.
again, says to the ORS
Right.
that the Linden Community School Board of Education has not intentionally made decisions to spike final average compensations for employees.
But what it doesn't say is that an administration or administrator has not done this. They could do that technically, and not
You are
be
correct, Mrs.
covered by this
Butler.
resolution. Is there any way to expand this resolution to include any administrator too? They could not.
I guess that's not the intent of the resolution, I guess we could take it back to the attorneys.
I would like to see it enhanced to that, just to cover everybody's bases.
This covers the board, because ultimately the board makes the decision to approve the contracts.
Right, but we don't know what's behind the contract sometimes. If, you know,
Okay.
I'd just like a little more in-depth.
And it's mostly about superintendents, right? Is that, it's mostly about like the
No, it's for
superintendent?
anybody.
The initial lawsuit was because of superintendents and assistant superintendents. The resolution covers everybody,
Oh,
all employees. So if there ever is a situation based on those remedies, those groups, where ORS says, employee A, we're not gonna give you what you think you've got because you made more money than you should have. Now, we have a resolution with this, and we can say, to help protect that employee, the board did not intentionally agree to that for the purpose of increasing that employee's pension.
thank you for clarifying that. For a second there,
But again, without putting some pressure on the administrators on their end of it, make sure they're not trying to, and I'm not saying that we would do that, but you just wanna cover your bases.
But ultimately, the board.
The board approves those contracts still though.
We do, but we don't know, I mean, you could say, you came to us, hey, we wanna raise this, business person's salary $15,000 because she's under market value.
Sure.
Okay, great. You know, she's gonna retire in 3 years too, but you don't even know that, or you won't get to know that, or whatever. And basically, that person gets a bump, whereas, why didn't we increase it before this? Why is it such a dramatic increase?
Yeah, without going through negotiations,
Yeah.
those situations, Steve, it's hard to comment on.
but does this resolution protect us? So if the super, like not you, but say, not you, like 2 years, so, you know, John Smith or whatever. If they were to do that down the road, we as board members are protected because that was something that was discussed in contracts that we weren't aware of. So we as a board are protected and our district's protected by this resolution.
Yeah. Ultimately, I think right now what's happening is because it became like a case study, if you will. And now they're just wanting everybody to take a look at it. Probably 6 years from now, it'll be like, oh, remember that time when there was
Something different.
that court case? So, yeah, it protects the district, it protects the board. I think the fact, I've been trying to like wrap my head around a way to say this, but I think the fact that it's, you know, I don't wanna use the word confusing, but a little bit like hard to wrap our arms around, but show the fact that this board doesn't think that way.
Right.
And I agree with Mr. Murphy that it would be troubling if a board did. So I think, you
Not the
know.
board, somebody underneath the board. Set us up for failure.
Yeah,
That's what I'm thinking.
true, but it still is the board's, like, if somebody's trying to set me up for failure, I would hope that I would recognize that and not approve it, based on, you know, educated research or whatever, but at any rate, I think this is good that it's kind of resolved, because it was,
Yeah, the lawsuit in general, I would agree.
yeah. Any other comments or questions on this right now? All right, so it was, moved and supported to approve the ORS lawsuit versus Batista settlement resolution as presented. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, up next is the emergency operations plan updates for 25-26. Again, this is one of those really critical pieces that's important to our district and needs to be reviewed on an annual basis. Hopefully everybody's had a chance to look through any of the key revisions and changes for the upcoming year. It is the administrative recommendation to approve the emergency operations plan for 25-26 as presented. And I'll support that. So any comments or questions on the emergency operations plan? All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, up next is the administrative assistant agreement for 2025 to 2027. It is the administrative recommendation to approve the administrative assistant agreement for 2025 to 2027 as presented. Do I have a motion? Okay, I'll support that. So comments, questions for Russ, any additional information that anybody need? All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, last action item of the evening is with regard to board attendance at conferences and workshops, per bylaw 0175.1. Oh yeah, this is a discussion item, thank you. So there's really no action to take necessarily, but, so we have talked about this at a couple of recent meetings with regard to some CBAs and conference workshops and things that we've been attending. So it was asked to kind of get together the budget. We haven't looked at it in a few years, and, so Russ and Michelle pulled all that information together for us to kind of put together what we spent and what our, what their recommended, what Russ's recommended budget would be within the line item of the superintendent budget for the year. So and I can let Russ speak to this too, because I know he's got more details. I spoke with him before the meeting about this, but it is kind of his recommendation to increase the budget to about $7,000 for board conferences and professional development, basically for the board within the year, which can include MASB or other workshops as board members might be interested. So comments, questions? Mr. Heaney?
Yeah, just out of curiosity, I mean, obviously, looking at the report here, we haven't spent that a lot of budget, so why the need to bump it from 3,500 to 7? What's the justification?
Sure, so the justification, moving forward, was based on some discussions we've had at the board level. So basically how it works, we have an account, superintendent / board of education. Within that account, we have line items. And we kind of put dollar amounts to those line items based on the amount of money we have set aside for that account. And for the past at least 5 years, we've just $3,500 because that's really what's been used, plus or minus. And then we've seen an increase in our board members wanting to take more educationally type conferences, classes, webinars, so on and so forth. So as we go through that process, again, the 7,000, it wasn't arbitrary. It was basically up to $1,000 a person in a pot, because some people may not use it. Some people may use it all. So I think that's, again, moving forward. If we go over 7,000, we have some options, because it's within that superintendent / board of education account. Within that account also includes our legal fees, our district technology, staff appreciation, miscellaneous. So we budgeted or set aside approximately $196,000 for that account. And within that account, we had the $3,500 set aside for Board of Ed conferences. Mileage we had set aside $250. We've only used 66% of that account. So from a fiscal responsibility, I think we've done a good job. And again, that's zero-based budgeting with general fund money. So that money goes back into the general fund, and then it gets, again, redistributed based on the accounts, then we go to the line items.
Another thing I asked Russ, kind of the same question earlier, we were talking, and, without knowing, we've had like pretty generous reimbursement on a lot of the MASB workshops and classes over the last few years, and that is, they've indicated that that's probably going away to some extent. They haven't really indicated how it's gonna stay if it does, so at least it gives us that additional.
On
funding as
that note,
well.
they still have indicated, as of now, that the state does the reimbursement, it's not MASB that does the reimbursement. But as of right now, they're indicating they're gonna continue that reimbursement piece.
Yeah, the genesis of the reason why, I don't disagree with any of that. I think it could be 10,000 from if everybody wanted to go use it, yeah, I'm good with that. Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Murphy?
Thank you.
Yeah, I have a slightly different approach on this, shocking, but I think that, $7,000, I appreciate Mr. Stelsky coming up with that number, I like that, $1,000 per board member. That's what, I think that doesn't need to average out that, it needs to be identified to that. So each board member has that available to them, and no more than that. And so, if we do that, I think we'll be ultimately fiscally responsible for the way that we, handle. I think, again, I've expressed some concerns about some of these classes that have been taken by others on the board. The value to the district, I don't see it. I think $1,000, go ahead and have your roll with it, and then beyond that, want to pay for it out of your own pocket, it's great. I just don't see the value to that, though. The 100 level classes that are fully reimbursed right now, as long as they're fully reimbursed, I'm all good with that. That would be outside of that $1,000 for the board member. So if they wanna, whatever they get reimbursed, they have $1,000 on top of that to work with, no more than that though. So I think, again, the fact that we only use 65% something, it's almost like a badge of disgust or something. No, it's a badge of honor in my opinion. I think that's fiscally, frugally responsible to do that. To only do what we need to do. And not just because it's
I
available.
don't think I indicated that it was a badge of disgust, I actually thought, I made the comment, Mr. Murphy,
Well,
that it was fiscally responsible
Okay.
as a board. So I just wanna make sure that's clarified, because you
Yeah.
spoke something that I did not speak.
okay, the tenure, the tone of it was though, that we didn't use as much as we could have, so I think we used, but in some cases, we used more than we should have. I guess that's my case, so again, I'd like to have a motion, or whenever we're gonna vote on this, that we do refrain, or that we change how we do individual board members and cap it to $1,000 in unreimbursed, expenses per year. And so therefore,
Yep. I don't think in this case it would be a motion, it would be a policy change or an add to a policy. Again, right now, we just line item, that line item can go up or down. So even though we say 7,000, we don't have to use it all, or we can use more than the 7,000.
well, I don't know how we need to word it, but what I'm trying to get to here is it's $1,000 per person of unreimbursed activity by a board member per year. That's what I think we should do.
So also currently, we take action on every request to attend these events. So we have that opportunity during those requests to also say no if we want to. So I think that's really where the action is. This is just kind of, we were revisiting because it's been a while to see what that line item looked like. You know, do we have enough? Do we have too much? I think, you know, Mr. Siselsky's comment on getting to that by thinking like, well, we have 7 board members, that would give every board member. I don't think we cap it at 1,000 because, for example, if one board member is attending a conference for a few days, the conference registration is probably 500, and then a hotel or mileage or whatever, that's gonna go over that. Maybe I'm not gonna use my full 1,000, so we're still averaging out. I think it would be kind of, short-sighted to just say, well, as long as you're within your 1,000. I mean, if we wanna think that individually, that's how you wanna vote when we take action on these items, that's up to individuals, but I think as a district, that would be a little bit short-sighted to basically give each board member an allowance and not think about like what the value to the board might be, outside of just the financial piece of it. Any other comments from any board members? Brooke?
So my question to you, Mr. Murphy, is you say you don't see value in anything above the 100 level courses. What are you basing that on? The title of the class alone? Have you seen the course material?
I've seen them. I did, again, I
I think I expressed in a previous meeting about the the areas that you don't delve into in those 200 and 300 level classes. I've taken a couple of them over the years, way back when, and to me, they just seemed like they were more delving into the administration of the district and not the overall responsibilities the school board has. So I think we should focus our effort on evaluating the superintendent, setting board policy, and just doing common sense actions. I think the MASB is pretty full of themselves, quite frankly. And I think we get trapped up in, well, you gotta do what the MASB says. No, we don't. We don't do their policies. We should not do their policies carte blanche, which has largely been done in the past, but we should have the option, and we do have the option to avoid, to go differently than what they recommend. Because it seems like they perceive themselves as some sort of, why do we even have local school boards? That's the problem. Why does the MASB just run the whole show? I mean, that's.
MASB is member driven, so everything that they do is driven by the member base, so they're not making these unilateral decisions.
When we
It's
do
member
delegate
based.
assembly every year, those are updates to their policies based on the delegation, which is the school board members of the state. So they're not making their own policies, they have a committee that creates, administrative recommendations for updating policies, and then the delegates, which is the state school boards, vote on that.
Right.
So they're not creating policies for us, we're actually creating policies for them.
The bottom line is, I don't see information coming back to this board that effectively moves this district forward from all these conferences that people are going to.
Well,
I
I'll give you
mean,
an example if you'd like
it's
one.
Sure.
Would you like an example? So there's a bunch of classes on advocacy for education. So in these classes, we learn how to talk to our legislators, how to effectively communicate with them, how to push them to do the things that we need them to do. That could be at the national level, doesn't necessarily have to be your local legislature, all the legislatures in Michigan, to push them. For example, right now, we should be pushing them to get this budget passed. I mean, we talk about those things. Another one, strategic planning and goal setting. That's part of our job as a board. That's a higher level class. Board operating procedure, how we should be operating as a board. Succession planning, our plan for hiring a new superintendent. I don't consider these useless at all. I think they're very important.
My only response to that is you've attended a lot of these conferences, and yet you have not come back to this board with a recommendation of, I think we should do this in the form of advocacy with our legislatures. I think we should do this. No, it's deaf ears. It's like, you may think, you may know something, but it doesn't get shared with this board, it doesn't get shared with this community. So it's like, to me, it's information that dies in a hole that doesn't do any good. So why invest in that?
I share plenty of information.
Yeah,
Whether
but
you
you
want
don't
to
share it publicly, you don't bring a recommendation to the board, we need to do this.
Well, maybe
Like
there
you
hasn't
said.
been a recommendation that needs to be done, I feel like Ms.
I
Hanson.
think she just brought up the thing about advocating for the budget to be done.
I do that as an individual also.
Okay. Well, here's what I'm saying about that, is you realize that their budget doesn't end till the end of September. So they don't have to have their budget done.
Actually,
Everybody
they
thinks
do.
it.
They're supposed to have it done by July first.
Legally, they do, Steve.
No,
You would know that if you took a class about it.
Yeah, well,
Legally,
All right.
they do.
Let's call a little bit of order here. I know we're gonna disagree on some of these things, that's fine. Ms. Rayburg has had her hand in the air, let's give her a minute.
Yeah, so when I became a new board member, MSCB really threw a lot of, hey, try these classes, try those classes. So when I was kind of looking at the courses, a lot of them were reimbursable. And then some of the places where the classes were offered, you had to pretty much go to the hotel, because some of these people drive 4 hours away. So when I started seeing the fees, I was like, well, this could add up. So my whole purpose of this was, I was thinking if this was a business, like say GM, and they offered a curve, like, okay, we want you to continue your education to make you a better employee, they would give you X amount of dollars for each year for education credits. And so I, to be honest with you, have not gone to some of these things. I've seen how much was being spent, and I felt bad because of one amount that was spent in a year. So now that I know that there's a bigger budget, we'll go. But I think as board members, we should be, how do I say this? We should be watching, if we could take something online maybe, and not have to pay for hotel mileage because of that, to save the district money, because budgets are gonna be tightening on all kinds of things. And then with Mr. Murphy's, things about the classes, there are some classes in there that are, I believe, are not useful. There's some 300 levels, generational diversity for school board members. not talking about diversity, equity, inclusion, unless we want to our federal funding. There's another class.
That's generational too, so that's a
Right.
little different.
But I have been to some of these things, and we as a district, I will tell you this, it is completely left leaning. When I went, I was not welcomed, by some of our, local districts. I wasn't gonna get all this out here, but since we have, one board member acting like these are amazing classes and things like that, I tend to disagree a little bit.
You can disagree, let's be
Right.
respectful, though, 'cause
I am.
there's more than one board member that feels
Right.
valued in classes, cause I do as well.
And
So
that's
it's
a-
not, and
Right.
not one individual.
Right, but I'm telling you, I just recently went, I'm still gonna go to some of these things, but before all this, I was looking at the budget, and when we are spending taxpayer money, period. And so I'm just trying to say, how do we save money for the taxpayer, so that when there are things that come up, maybe like, look, do we need to pay the safety resource officer more money? I was looking at this in a fiscal way, and somehow this got turned into personal, and that's not my intent. And I think that it's responsible that if we say, okay, $7,000 budget, like, take as many classes you want that are free, and then take some that are, like, maybe you don't get so much money back right away, but maybe carry that for the next year. Because there's gonna be new board members that come over, and maybe someone moves, like past board members have left. And so we wanna save the district as much money as we can. And it should not be personal, it should just be a fiscal thing like an employee.
And I do agree with that, I mean, I think if the district ever got in like financial distress,
Yes.
you know, we would consider that for sure, we're not gonna keep, you know, that would be a consideration, we're not gonna keep doing these things when someone's, you know, being laid off. I think we haven't been in that position, but I agree with you on that, and I think we would all agree that we would do that if the time came.
That's a discussion I had with Ross as well. I said, you know, the district was in dire straits where we didn't have the budget. Better believe that I wouldn't be going and taking these classes because we have employees to pay. I wouldn't want to see anyone laid off because I want to take a class.
Exactly, and I think another thing to consider is, and I don't have any direct research on this, because I've never really looked into it, because you know, we all volunteer our time here, but there are some boards that pay their board members like a higher rate for being on the board, and we have made a conscious decision as Linden not to do that, like we pay very little, kind of just like out of respect for your time and maybe your gas, to come to the meeting, and so with that, I think having these additional, you know, opportunities for development for the district and for individuals is, you know, makes sense, but, honestly, I feel like all as a board, I think we're kind of all on the same page with it. It's just views, and we don't have to agree on the modality of training. This doesn't even have to be MASB. If you find some other type of workshop that will help promote you as a board member or our district, if something that's going on in the world of education that you want to attend, you can bring that to the board. It's just, MASB makes it easy because they're a local organization that has a lot of opportunity for board members, but it doesn't have to be this. So, I just wanna make sure that everybody has, and also, we've had, you know, in the past, and we only went back a little ways on this, but, you know, sometimes there's, you know, we have 3 or 4 board members at a time that might be wanting to attend these things, and if we only have 1 or 2 that are doing it at the time, you know, it's probably not gonna break the budget, because that's, you know, if it got to the point where everybody on the board was like, yeah, I wanna go to this, you know, we might have to start making some decisions, like, well, you can go this time, I'll go the next time, whatever, so, but I think we, you know, can discuss that when it comes about as well. Mr. Haney?
Just real briefly, we all have the same opportunity to do this. So from that aspect, I can't disagree more, because if somebody wants to take their personal time, they wanna further their education, they wanna represent Linden to the NASB and anybody else in the educational field. For that, I'm good. I've got no issue, like I said earlier, we can make this $15,000 as far as I'm concerned. There's no true benefit besides volunteerism and caring about our communities for being on this board.
Yeah.
So being the fact that we're on it, I'm disappointed I haven't taken those opportunities as much as I should. Maybe I will this upcoming year. But at the same token, I won't begrudge anybody for wanting to go be more well-rounded as a board member and us paying for that. So thank you.
I second what you just said. If it was some sort of a prophecy.
I just wanna follow up that I think what needs to happen here is that there needs to be results. If these people take these classes and they feel they're so valuable, then we need to see it in this boardroom, that it's truly that way. Need some concrete evidence that, hey, look, I went and took this class, this is how I think we need to change our district because of that class, boom, moving on. until I see those kinds of things, I think we need to pump the brakes on how much we allow to happen. And then once it starts to happen and it produces results, then you look at it again and think about bumping it up or widening the thing. But I don't want my $1,000 that I feel should be allocated to me to go to somebody else on the board because they choose. I'm sorry, just the MASB, after 25 plus years on this board, it's gotten to be a little bit, you see the little kinks in the armor over time.
Steve, when was the last time you attended one of their classes? Just out of
Yeah.
curiosity. I know you've been on the board a long
No,
time, so.
I haven't, I've done the basics, I've done the president's thing, I've done a couple more, I didn't remember what they were, the 200, 300 level, 200, I don't think I did 300, but, I just saw a little value in those 200s, because it just didn't fit my role on the board. Why am I doing this? It's not my responsibility, but why am I being educated about this?
I mean,
And I think we
I
also.
think it's a money-making operation for the MASB, and that's why they do it.
And I think we also have to remember, this shouldn't be about MASB, it's about educating the board members. Because there may be other, as Ms. Luck has mentioned, there may be other opportunities out there for our board members above and beyond MASB. MASB is the State Association for Michigan School Boards. That's part of their duties, are to provide opportunities to learn, but they may not be the only one. So again, I think, again, keeping the emotions, the bipartisan back into it, we need to keep the idea that it's about MASB out of the equation, because it may not be.
And I agree with that, but also having said that, I guess I would encourage, Mr. Haney kind of mentioned it, any board member that hasn't been to one of these workshops or classes in a while, maybe to sign up for one and just see, and you might still feel that there's not value, but you might see that it's a little different. I know just the interaction with other school board members in and of itself provides value, because it helps give me at least a baseline of, how things are going here versus other schools. It usually makes me feel pretty good about how Linden's doing. And I think as far as results go, we have a highly effective superintendent. And going back to the superintendent report, our schools have been named top.
Best
Best school. There's your evidence. They've got a blue ribbon award. I mean, that's the evidence. It might not be a direct result of me or anyone else going to a workshop, but it's the fact that we are a pretty well-run school district. And that is thanks to each individual and us as a collective. So and until that changes, I just don't understand why we would continue to, have this debate over what one person, Mr. Haney put it perfectly. If one person wants to continue to educate themselves, and why not allow that? It betters all of us in the long run, so.
In perception, it should have done this, but it hasn't today. Okay, that's what my point is.
That's your opinion.
Well, you haven't brought anything, Mrs. Hanson, to this board.
So me knowing how a school district operates and having education behind my decisions, that's the big value right there. If I don't know what I'm doing, how am I supposed to make an appropriate decision?
Why do you wanna hoard this information to yourself?
I'm not.
She sends out.
I send reports to share it all the time, I send information to the whole
And we have sent
board.
those out, and so information, to my knowledge, does get passed on to the board, including even Mrs. Rambert attending some of those and passing that knowledge back out to the board. So again, I think we are following the policy that does talk about when board members attend conferences, that they report back to the board. So again, I think we have done that. I think we have followed policy to make sure that that information is getting sent out.
One last thing, I would say before, since a lot of people did not, I guess it's really all the priors to me that didn't go to these classes, I think just because you take a class too doesn't make you more educated. That's kind of what you're saying, Mr. Murphy, because you can have the most education and lack wisdom in decision making. So for all the prior board members who maybe didn't go, or like you said, you haven't, I value your opinion just as much as someone else that maybe has the whole diamond level, because it's not the information, it's how you use information. And to every previous board member that maybe did not go, I appreciate all your service.
Yeah.
This is a beautiful conversation because it truly demonstrates the function of a board. I don't begrudge anybody for feeling the way they do, including you, Steve. It is what it is. We work as one unit, you get to vote on things. If it passes, great, if it doesn't, we keep moving on. So
Yeah.
I think it's a perfect example of the functionality of our board. Thank you.
I agree, I just wish sometimes we could agree to disagree in a little more respectful way to one another, but besides, we do pretty good, but.
The bottom line is, I think that my opinions are a function of what I think the community wants, and what I think will work. So it's a combination of those two things. And I think there's one thing that we need to do as a board, is we need to get what's going on in here out into the public in the form of a podcast. I think we should be podcasting our meetings, sending them out there, making them available to everybody, so you don't have to come here at 6 o'clock on the night, Wednesday night, to find out what's going on. The podcast is a great structure to disseminate information. And so I really think, you know, Beck Township's been doing something, I don't know if it's a podcast or what it is, but they've been doing their meetings forever. And yet we can't seem to do it here. I mean, Mrs. Phillips is doing everything she can to try and spread the word, but I think you need more force behind it.
Steve, this isn't really part of this discussion, although it can be a different discussion, but, it's not part of this one. All right, we do have a closed session this evening, so it is, I'll make a motion, to move to closed session for section 8C, collective bargaining strategy of the Open Meetings Act. Do I have support?
Support.
It's been moved and supported to move to closed session, all those in favor? Aye, opposed? Motion carries.